Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week. My name is Paul Church. I am the Managing Director of Interquest. We're a tech, data, and digital recruitment company. And this is our people, culture, and tech community. We broadcast every Wednesday at 1 p.m. as a webinar. And of course, we provide this as a podcast as well. So many people will be listening to this on catch up. So this week, over the weekend, the community on meetup.org surpassed 800 members. And tomorrow is 9 months to the day since we did our first one of these. So it's a really, really big achievement for me and the community. I believe I'm so proud of it. And with 3 months to go before we hit a year, I'm sure we'll get to 1,000. So thanks so much to everyone who has followed this and contributed and spoken and listened and shared. And please continue to do so. Today, we are joined by Diana George, and I'm going to ask Diana to give us an intro in just a second. And we're going to be talking about culture and how to create a winning culture in a business. Now, as somebody on the front line of what's going on in the market in terms of recruitment, working in a recruitment company, we've got a good visibility of how strong the war on talent is right now, the war for talent rather. And there was a period last year where it was absolutely a fantastic opportunity if your business was in the right position, where you could get some amazing people for reasonable salaries because some great people were on the market through no fault of their own. In our markets, which we tend to see so frequently in tech, digital and data, that's kind of changed now. And we've gone back to this very few candidates for the jobs out there, are very competitive. Candidates are getting called all the time by recruiters and headhunters. Which means all of your employees are getting called all the time up by people like me, unfortunately. And certainly there's a real fight to attract the best people to your business. So the culture of your company will play such an important role, especially after the last 12 months when people's priorities and values may have changed along the way. So people need to be invested in your business and the brand and the mission of your company. And that's what we're going to talk a bit about today. Certainly more Diana than myself. But Diana, look, welcome to the podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. And I just want to say thank you so much, Paul, for having me, be a guest here today. And I just listened to you and you said that really 9 months ago, you just kind of birthed this, and this was during the pandemic. So it just goes to show that great ideas and different things have come out of this that's going to help us in the future and wherever we go. So just want to say congratulations on reaching that milestone.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Diana. Well, look, would you mind just giving a bit of an intro into who you are for our audience, a bit about kind of your background and what's led you to the position that you're in now? That'd be fantastic.
Sure. So Diana George is the name once again. By George HR Solutions is my company, but there is a backstory to that. And so for many years, I've worked with some major and global companies. One of them was BOSE Speakers. The other was Omega the Watch Company. And I have to say that my experience was always a great experience in terms of being inside of the companies. I worked for some great companies that really treated their employees well. And so as a result of that, I learned a lot. I learned how to engage with the people around me. I learned how to really manage people. I learned how to be a great leader. And our HR department, when I worked at BOSE Speakers, was so great at bringing out the best in people. And I thought, that's what I really want to do. I want to be able to do this all the time. And I took this in with me throughout my career, and I did work other places. And eventually I started my own business because I wanted to do just that and work with companies. However, I found that in most companies that I went into to help them do things, we had to go back to the employee relation issues. I couldn't really help them with anything else until we solved some of the employee relation issues or even hiring issues, which brought me back to HR again. So I always tell people that I stumbled into HR by mistake. It wasn't something that I, wanted to do or thought I was going to do, but I just kept being drawn back to it. It was something that I not only enjoyed, but I was good at. And I had an opportunity to touch the lives of a lot of different people, which for me was something I always wanted to do and have an impact. And I was able to consistently do it. So, after leaving Omega, which I did in 2018, I decided to go ahead and start my own consulting business again. So I work with business businesses, and I really help them to understand, not only hire the right people, but also help them understand how to engage, how to keep their best people, how to have a great company culture, so that they can retain the top talent that they do have.
Absolutely. Thanks, Diana. Brilliant. And I didn't mention it before to the audience, but you're of course coming to us live from Washington, D.C. today. That's right, is it?
I am. I am in Bowie, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. I am very centrally located to Baltimore, Maryland, to Washington, D.C., as well as Virginia. So I'm in that sweet spot, so to speak. So yes, I am, stateside right now and happy to be here.
Fantastic. We're happy to have you. Thanks so much. So let's, if we just talk about this last 12 months. So a winning company culture is always important. I think there's probably been more emphasis placed upon a company culture and this kind of switch between employees being lucky to work for a business to actually companies being lucky to find the right people as the market has shifted. But do you think in the last 12 months that you've seen a shift in how important that company culture is to keep and attract the best people?
Absolutely. So the last 12 months was unprecedented for all of us. And I don't think anybody could have expected what was going on in entirely the workforce, and where you just take for granted that you have employees and they should be happy to have a job or work for us. And everything changed. Everything shifted in our universe. And so now people are working remotely. And I think more than anything, the pandemic had people even take a look at their own personal lives and what was fulfilling to them and really what made sense to them, and assess whether this was worth it. Was this the job that I wanted to have? And so with that being said, it was important for employers to engage with the employees to understand where they were coming, understand like, how do I keep these people that we have, especially great people, with companies pivoting, with some companies being shut down and not being able to operate at all. And then having those individuals there, you want the best at that time. And so I think it was a wake-up call also for some businesses in terms of how do we do that? If we haven't been doing it properly, if we haven't been doing it the right way, we really need to take a look at it if we're going to keep and retain our best people. So I think there was a lot of changes, and a lot of companies had a wake-up call in terms of, taking a look at how they definitely engage people. And it becomes even more critical for smaller companies. If you're a larger company and you have a big budget and you have, an opportunity, and you have a lot of people out there that can do the headhunting for you and other things, then sometimes you don't realize the impact. But if you're a smaller company, you definitely realize the impact if one person walks away from your company, if one person's no longer there.
Absolutely. And I started this conversation in terms of just talking about my perspective in terms of the war for talent. Would you agree with that? Do you think that it's back on? It has got really, really competitive again to get the right people?
Oh, it is very, very competitive now because, once again, if we take a look at the pandemic and what happened, it forced our organizations to reassess. So the people that they have there right now, you want them to be the best people. Last year, some companies, they took a big hit. So now they're trying to play catch up. And the best way to do that is with the best people. So it becomes competitive in the sense that everybody's looking for the best people right now. And so the best people are going to get snapped up very quickly. And when they get there to your company, if it's not the right environment, they have choices. They will go someplace else. They will look for someplace else. And they know that there's going to be several people knocking on their door, calling them to say, look, why don't you come over here? This is what we can offer you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think that businesses go wrong when it comes to their culture? What's kind of the big no-nos or the typical mistakes you see when you go into a company to kind of to support and help them?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And you see a couple things. Sometimes if you're looking at smaller to mid-sized companies, the culture hasn't even been defined. And so I think that it starts with really defining, what does that look like? What is the company culture? What does that look like? What's going to be successful? What makes a successful person in this organization? And I think that that's so critical. And then I think for larger companies or companies that have a company culture already, are you living your company culture? Or is it just written down on paper? Is it really trickling from the top down? Is it really something that people know? Do they even know what it is? And are they living it every day? And so that becomes real important also. It just can't be something that is nice to say, but it has to be something that you live every day. And so there's definitely some companies that are out there right now when I think of that do a real good job of that. And I'm going to mention a company, you may not be familiar with it because it is a US company, but it's a fast food company. It's called Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A here in the States, I'm telling you, you go to a Chick-fil-A here, you would think they're giving away something. You get in line and it's like, okay, why are so many people here to Chick-fil-A no matter what? But they have identified what a great company culture is and a great place to work. That trickles down because the way that you treat your employees is the way that your employees treat your customers.
What's some of the initiatives that Chick-fil-A have done then?
Well, one of the things that they do is they're really invested in training. And I think that's so important. If you want to stabilize an employee, if you want to make them feel like they're part of something, if you want to empower them, you have to train them. And so training becomes very important, and having a training that's ongoing. So it's not just the initial, I'm going to come in and you're going to train me to do the job, but what does that personal development look like? What does that consistent training look like so that individual is growing with you? One of the things that they have for sure is, like most companies or most people, when you go in, they say thank you. Not Chick-fil-A. One of the things that they're known for is saying, my pleasure. So it's just small things like that that make you feel valued as a customer. When I go there, anytime you place an order, they always ask you what your name is. And afterwards, they tell you, they call you by name. So it's all those things that make you feel connected, but you can tell that the employees are engaged. But one of the things that's very key that Chick-fil-A does as a company, and it's a franchise, if you have a franchise, you have to work there. You can't have it as an investment where some franchise do. They want you working there so that leadership trickles down from the very top.
That's interesting, really interesting. And are there any other companies for you when you think about businesses in the US or elsewhere that really stand out as having that culture absolutely nailed? Which other companies stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say another one of the companies would be Southwest Airlines. So Southwest Airlines, if you ever fly them, once again, their employees are empowered, they're engaging, they make the job fun. And their culture is one of fun that people enjoy coming to work. They feel a part of a vision and something that's just greater than I'm coming to work to get a paycheck. And I say this all the time, 70% of our time is spent at work. And so 70% of that time when you're there, you want it to be great. You want it to be something that you enjoy going to work for. It's fulfilling. You enjoy the people. You like the environment. You like what it is that you're doing, and you feel valued or acknowledged as an employee or a staff member that's coming to work every day. So I would definitely say Southwest Airlines is another one of those organizations that really take that seriously in terms of engaging, the employees and keeping them very much a part of everything that's going on. JetBlue is another one that's here in the States. Nike. There's just so many that are there that do it well. And one of the things that I encourage people is, find companies that do it well if you're a smaller company, and take some of those things that they're doing well. I think so often if you're a smaller company, you're thinking that I gotta, recreate the wheel. I gotta do something different. And there's so many examples of great things out there right now. So if you take some of those great things and just incorporate it as it fits into your company, you can already start to put a framework there or a blueprint in terms of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think smaller companies are able to compete with the businesses who have got the big budgets? I mean, does it need to break the bank to recreate that, do you think?
No, not at all. I think, and if we take a look at all these companies that I just mentioned, guess what? They started small companies at one point. Any company that starts, it starts, as a small company, but it starts as an idea, as a way of solving a problem. And as long as you can solve that problem and you can engage with your customer and make them feel valued to come back, and you can incorporate that so that your employees do the same thing, I think that you have an opportunity. So once again, during this pandemic, we have seen there have been record-breaking number of companies that have started around the world during the pandemic. And they're not starting out as big companies. They're all starting out as small companies with an idea or something that they decided to do, and they will grow from there. So no, I don't think that you have to be a tremendous company with, an astronomical budget, but you have to have these things on paper. And one of the things that I truly suggest is that as you're starting to develop your company, start documenting these things and putting down on paper now. Because I think that a lot of times, it's an afterthought. And so if you start doing this right now as you're building your company, you have the foundation. And so one of the things that I truly believe is that HR in any company is your foundation. It's your stabilizing force, for the company. And if you're just starting out, guess what? You're probably the HR person. You're everything. You're your chief bottle washer. You're everything at this point. But understand that and start documenting things now as the great things that you want to continue to put in place as you move ahead. So it makes it a lot easier versus, okay, now let me go back and try to think, what was it that we were doing, or why should we do this? So I would say document, and put these things down on paper as you're starting to grow your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I think we've talked on this forum about the role of HR in the last 12 months, and certainly HR. I mean, at the back end of last year, LinkedIn reported that HR was one of the most in-demand skills, and we've talked quite a bit on our webinars around what the role of HR looks like now and how it's evolved. I mean, how do you see its evolution in the last few years, and also the last 12 months specifically, the role of HR?
Sure. HR is a very different role than what it used to be, I would say 10 and 15 years ago. And so HR it has a seat at the table now. There's so much value in having a great HR individual or department within your organization. And I think that we've gotten away from, in the past, realizing that we're talking about humans. It's called human resources for a reason. And so really connecting, because when you connect with the individuals that you have working, the ROI that you have there is incredible. And sometimes I think there's this misconception that there is no ROI on human resources. So often in my own career, I've seen where, okay, if it means giving more money or a budget to HR, or giving the budget to the marketing department, it was hands down marketing, because they can see the immediate, okay, if we do this, we're going to get this, and we'll get this amount of return. Where when you're taking a look at people, sometimes they can't automatically see what that is, but there's truly, an investment in that, and return on investment that you get by investing in your people. And that investment is training. It's investing with people on a regular basis. It's having the capacity, and it's having the ability to engage with individuals so that you get the best out of them, so that they want to give more to your company. And that's an ROI in itself, because that will equate to also production. I always say this: a happy employee is a productive employee. So if employees are not happy, they're not productive. And there is a cost to not having, there is a cost when you don't have non-production.
Absolutely agree. And just before we go on to the 7 strategies, which I'm keen to kind of hear about, my theory and based on data I've seen is that the importance of money and a salary and a paycheck is not as important as it was. I think if we talk about the 90s, let's say, I think that it was really about earning the most money, and that's what would dictate where people went and whether people stayed. I believe, and particularly in the last 12 months, but also before that, that shifted, and actually being invested in the business you work for is perhaps at least as important as that. Do you think I'm right there, or do you think it's flawed?
I think that you're absolutely right. Let me just say this, money is something that is a necessity. It's something that we need to actually live. It's something that causes us to have the survival that we have. But as we all know, money is not going to make a person happy. Money is not. And we have seen this. We have seen where you have CEOs. We've seen where people they make a decent salary. They make a lot of money, but they're miserable in their life and what it is that they're doing. And I think that people are looking for more than just that. They're looking for fulfillment. And so I have seen, and even in my own career, and as I work with people, people that would be willing not to have that top-notch salary, but to have other components that are in place on a day-to-day basis so that they do feel valued. And that could be anywhere from, having a day off, having, work-life balance, having a boss that they really enjoy working with, having collaboration. All those things are so important. So I totally agree with you, Paul. It just doesn't go down to money. I think people want more than just that. And I think those days of just, I'm going to throw a lot of money at you and that's going to be it. Because I will tell you this, money does not solve those problems. And being in HR, I have been on the side of people that have come and said, well, if you were to pay me more money, or I don't feel that the compensation is enough. And I have seen where we have sometimes done that and those people still aren't happy. So it's not the money at the end of the day. And money, I will say this, is the lowest form of duty. When people are more aligned with purpose and when things that make them and are gratifying and make them happy, they come in with that desire to serve and they come in with that desire to do 100% versus I'm just going to throw a lot of money at you. And that doesn't win. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, you gave me the money. I did the job. I'm going. I'm out of here. And so you want more than that, especially if you're going to grow a business.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks for that. And we've not even got to the 7 strategies yet. We've got a couple of questions coming through though. So let's go to those and then we'll get on to the 7 strategies. So a question from Neelafar. So Neelafar is asking, going to the office and work gave many things in return, for example, a sense of belonging, being a part of community and a space for flowing off ideas among many others. Does working from home impact these things in your opinion, Diana?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that last part, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the chat as well, but it's going to the office and work gave many things in return. For example, a sense of belonging, being part of a community and a space for flowing of ideas among many other things. Does working from home impact these things?
I think there's a change. And when you say, does it impact things? I mean, we all tend to be social creatures, and there needs to be that form of being able to connect with people. We're just doing it and we're having to do it in a different way. And the key to doing it right now is doing it in a way that becomes almost creative in a sense. And so as we know, there have probably the Zoom stock has gone up over the last year. I mean, Zoom was a company that I had used previously before the pandemic, but where they are now, versus where they were 13 months ago, is just totally different because of the amount of people that are on Zoom. Zoom gives us the ability and have that presence where you can at least see a person. And I think that's so crucial. And even for me in HR, it's like, it's impactful for me to be able to have and see that person. You get so much from just that visual, whether or not the person really is hearing you, whether or not, you feel that they understand you. You get more of a perception of that if you can at least see the person versus if you can't see them at all. So I think that we've had to be very creative in the last, 13 months or more in making that happen. We have Microsoft Teams now. We have all of these various things. So it becomes a way of being creative in how you're engaging with each other. I mean, I've done everything from Zoom birthday calls to, Zoom, everything that you could possibly have, because now we had to find a different way. So, I know that this is not what we're used to, but in terms of having that sense of belonging, I really would encourage people right now, in addition to the telephone calls, do something that you can see that other person, even if it's just a short amount of time, come up with some creative ways that you can, engage with each other, even if it's just on a Zoom call like we're on right now, this webinar. I mean, even webinars have, like we were doing webinars before, but we're doing webinars a lot more now as a result of the pandemic.
Absolutely agree. And Neelafar, just from my experience, I think, and at the moment, as we're going into this phase where people are going to start to return to the office in the UK, nobody I've spoken to wants to work in the office 5 days a week. Nobody I've spoken to wants to work from home 5 days a week. So I think there is something you lose by not being from home. And of course, you've got to be creative, but I think it's going to be about this hybrid model that we're working to and we're moving towards. But that's been my take so far. Another question for you.
Sorry, Donna, say something else about that hybrid model. I think a lot of companies right now are going to be taking a look at what they were doing previously, and do we need to incorporate a hybrid model in there? And I think this is going to serve a lot of people. Also, you have, moms who just, had children, and, if based upon their position, maybe right now they can't go back to, work full time or be in the office every day. So this hybrid is going to allow to get the best out of people. And I think that there's been this whole thing is like people have to be in the office because that's the only way that we know that the work is getting done. I think to the contrary, a lot of organizations have been able to see that they even have more production right now because people have a work environment or they have a schedule that allows them to be more flexible, but be more productive. So I think that hybrid, as you mentioned, is going to be something that I think a lot of organizations are going to be like taking a look at. Do we really need to have you come in the office every day? Is it a necessity, or can we have you come in, a few days a week, to your point? So I think that hybrid is going to be something that a lot of organizations are looking at in the future.
Absolutely. And I think even just staying on this point for a second more is even at Interquest, with the conversation we're having is that for me, and I think this will replicate across the UK certainly, is that the days of the office being that place you have to go because it's there are kind of gone. And I think businesses are going to have a responsibility to come up with good reasons why people should go to the office, because if it's could just be to go and have a social event, could be to have some training, could be to have a team meeting. But the idea of everyone kind of filing into an office because that's where we're meant to do our work, I think that those days are over, which is probably a good thing. Cool. Another question then before we go to the 7 strategies. So this is on a direct message, so I'll read it out. So I've seen a lot of companies and managers posting on social media recently about how great the places they work at are because there are lots of perks, extra days off, things like that, not monetary, but things like extra days off. Everyone is doing this now, though. So how do you distinguish between the genuinely good companies and those doing it for lip service?
Wow, that's a great question. And so one of the things that I always say to individuals is if you're interviewing for a position, keep in mind that you should be interviewing that company just like they're interviewing you. I think that there's a reverse thing in it. We go in and we just think, oh, I'm here, and hopefully they choose me. No, you should be choosing them as well, and it should align with your goals. It should align with your purposes, and it should align with a lifestyle that's complementary to you. And so I think that if we start to do that, then you have more of that understanding. So in terms of the lip service, I think it's important to kind of do your research. Go online, take a look at, not just what, the company is saying, but what are people that have worked for the company saying? I mean, I know that Glassdoor has been used a lot in terms of finding out about the company and, how the company is rated because employees go on there. So find out, what are employees saying about the company, because they're the individuals that really, at the end of the day matter when it comes to all these things. And if it really is worth it to the employees, and if it is what they say it is. So that great question, you don't want to get lip service. And part of that is asking very succinct questions in the interview process itself from your end. Always go with questions. If you're looking for a job, always go with questions. Ask certain key questions like, how does management handle, employee relation issues? How can I engage with HR? What are some of the things? Ask, are there a few people that you can talk to? So have it in mind, I am interviewing them just like they're interviewing me.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. But we've got another one that's come through. Okay, we have this one. Ryan Smith, how are you? Good to see you here. The question here is: average tenure in jobs in digital has reduced dramatically over the last 5 years. Do you think average tenure will now increase as businesses improve how they look after their staff? That's a really great question, Ryan. I like that because typically in our space and Ryan's space, which is more kind of a data and product side, the lifespan of people at companies is typically 2 years, which compared to 10, 15 years ago, completely changed. But now companies are going to improve and look after their people. Do you think that will change, Dana?
I think that as businesses start to really invest more in their people and improve how they engage with people, I think that will change. And I mean, it just goes to show if you're at some place and you really enjoy what it is that you're doing, you're fulfilled, you feel like you're compensated, correctly. Like, why would you leave? There's no reason to leave. And, I come from the luxury retail world, and I don't know how many people are familiar with the jewelry company, Harry Winston, known for their jewelry, itself. And so let me tell you something, nobody ever leaves Harry Winston. Okay, no one leaves. And so the thing is, trying to get in there is so hard because of that fact that nobody's leaves. So the thing is, they must be doing something right. And there's a reason why people people want to be there. And it's the same thing when you have, something that's working well, you see the people growing. And so I'll share an example with you. When I was started working with Omega, the watch company years ago, one of the things that truly impressed me during my interview process, and I went there, I saw people engaged in the hallways, and I saw people that had been working there 20 years, 15 years, 35 years. And you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, somebody's there that long, they must be doing something right. And so when you're in an environment that's conducive to not only making it productive, but fun, engaging, people get along well, why do you want to leave? You will want to stay there. And so I think, from the tech, if, that's the case, I think that tech companies, they're still learning a lot of things as to what it takes to really keep people here and keep people engaged where they want to continue to be here over a longer period of time. Because let's face it, there's always advancement in tech. They're always, on cutting edge and doing things differently. So it's not like that's going away. So there is always a future there. And so I think the companies in tech that really understand this and can do this well will have people that will stay with them for a long period of time.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Ryan. So let's please do keep the questions coming, by the way. Anyone else has any questions, please just pop it in the chat. So let's talk about your book, Diana, and then just talk about a bit about I suppose what inspired you writing this book, and then we can go on to what the strategies within it. That'd be great.
Yeah, so this book was an anthology. I was part of a project with, several other women at the time. And the name of the book was Anatomy of Accomplishment, Your Guide to Bigger, Better, Bolder Business Results. And so I thought about what it is that I can offer. And, for me, a company culture has always been something that's been important. And as I mentioned to you, my career, I worked for some major companies and some great companies that did it right. So I didn't have the experience that maybe other people have had that's where it wasn't done right. So I only knew the good things, and I knew how to take that and to speak about that. And there were things that I knew that if other people could understand, whether they were on the leadership end or they were going into a company in terms of what to look for, that it would help them at the end of the day. And these are things that can be done, in any company. It's not something that, okay, you have to have a lot of money to do. There are things that any company or anybody can do based upon, just investing in people. And so that's why I decided to, write these 7 strategies. And they're ones that I have used myself over the years.
Fantastic. All right. So let's go through them. Let's go through the strategies.
Yeah. So the first strategy that I have here is listen. And I think that this is so key, but it's not done enough. And when I say listen, I think from all aspects, all leadership in the company, listen to what it is that your people are telling you. And so we go into things a lot of times thinking that we know, but we won't find out unless we really listen. And when I say listen, ask questions, find out, but then follow up with people, but really be invested in finding out what they would like to have. And so I'll use this, example. I had an ex-husband who, I love flowers. Okay. He didn't like flowers. He felt like, why would I give you flowers? Flowers die. But I like flowers. And so at the end of the day, he didn't give me flowers. And it's like, because he felt like they would die. But if you listen to me, I said that I like flowers. So, if you listened to me and gave me flowers, then guess what? I'd be a happy person because you gave me flowers. It's that simple. And so when you start to listen, you find out a lot of information, and listening in the sense that you don't come with preconceived ideas. You're not already thinking that you know what's going on, and you've given that person or that group your entire attention. In organizations and in our day to day, we tend to be so busy. So even when we're having conversations with people, sometimes, are we really listening? Is our mind already, at the grocery store or picking up the kids or doing other things that we need to do? Because if it is, the people that are in front of us, they know that, they feel that, they can perceive that. So listening comes from a lot of different aspects, and really being able to do that so that people feel acknowledged and they feel heard. Because when you do it right, people will feel acknowledged, they'll feel heard, they will feel that this is a person that I can go to, and that they're going to hear me and listen to me. So I think listen for me was one of the key things that could be done and should be done.
And would you, if you're looking to, of course, one-on-one conversations always going to be the best, but if you're looking to scale it, and get as much information as possible. Is there any particular tools or software that you've seen used? I mean, we have pulse surveys. I think there's something called Peakon. Is there anything that you've used that works well?
You know what? I've used good old fashioned SurveyMonkey, and I still use SurveyMonkey in terms of putting out information. But I think, Paul, I like what you just said, because a lot of times companies will put out engagement surveys. And part of the reason is they want to get the feedback. But once you get the feedback, you need to be willing to listen to the feedback, digest the feedback, but then you always have to follow up.
Mm.
If you're going to ask employees for feedback, if you're going to ask them for information and you don't follow up, then in their minds, it's like, why did I do this? They didn't listen to me to begin with, or they don't even feel like there was any caring because there's no follow up to the questions that you ask. And so it's almost like a mute point at that time. They feel like, well, why did they even bother having me do this? And then what happens is the next time, they're not going to be so prone to go ahead and fill these type of surveys out because nothing came out of the previous one.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Okay, brilliant. So number 2.
Okay, number 2, I say set standards and expectation for employee participation. So when you set standards and expectations for employee participation, you're saying that I want everybody to participate. It's not just the management, it's not just the leadership. It's once again adding value to everybody that comes into your organization, because I'm expecting you to participate full out. I'm expecting you to be a part of everything that's going on. And that goes back to getting feedback. That goes back to making people feel valued in the organization and feel like there is something that they can contribute. So when you have that from the very beginning, and there is that expectation that, oh, I need for you to participate because you're part of this group, you're part of this team, then that's what you get, and you'll get great ideas, you'll get great employee participation. But if you don't expect that from the very beginning, then you're setting them up for failure as well as yourself. Because somewhere during the line, when you want them to participate and they're not, then you have to go back as to why they're not. You never expected it from the very beginning. So employee participation is so crucial if you want to have a great company culture that forces that all the time. Expect it from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Okay. Number
Yeah.
3.
Okay, number 3 is identify qualities and skill sets. And when I say identify qualities and skill sets, sometimes you can have people that come in and they'll be in your company for a while, and they may do exceptional in the area that they're in. But then sometimes you may have employees that they don't do exceptional in that area, but you identify that, the skill set and what they're doing here, it may be better off in a different department. So what I'm saying is identify those skill sets for people so that we're not writing them off, but we really are taking them where they are, the value that they have, and putting them in a place where they can add that value. I think that's so important. And sometimes we don't take a look at that. We don't take a look at where can a person best serve us in the company. And so sometimes that's sort of like a matter of evaluation. And that's also a matter of speaking to the individuals that you have. So one of the things that I do consistently, I do, instead of exit interviews, I do stay interviews. And for those of you that are on the call, I don't know if you do stay interviews, but stay interviews are designed to keep the person engaged. You find out from individuals what are the things that they enjoy about the job. And there's 5 questions that I usually ask the person. What is it that you love about your job? So what keeps you coming back? What is it that you love that keeps you coming back? Number 2, what is it that you don't like about it? What makes you want to push the snooze alarm button in the morning? Because you will find out from that individual, like, what are some of the things that, if they could change or they don't necessarily like about the job. It could be something that's rote or routine. It could be, you get a lot of information from this. It could be, people that they don't necessarily get along with, or you can find employee relations, but it just gives you so much insight into the person themselves. Number 3, I asked the question, if you were to win the lottery and resign, what is it that you would miss from coming to work every day? Very informative. You get a lot of information about this question itself. Some people will automatically tell you, well, I wouldn't resign. I love coming here every day. And that's great. That's when you hear that, you're like, okay, great. But then you hear other things like, oh, well, I would miss the people. I would miss the customers. I would miss the people, the clients that we engage with. I would miss this aspect of it. So you get a lot of stuff from that. Number 4 is, if you were to go back to a position that you had in the past and you loved, what would it be and why? You will learn so much, because you will learn different skill sets that maybe that person has that you're not even aware of. because maybe it's not applicable to the job that they're in right now. But by learning these things about the individual, you know also now, like, where would this person best be suited? What is going to keep them engaged? What is going to keep them motivated? So by asking that question, you learn so much about the individual and what was it that they got excited about in another time, another position. And you learn skill sets that maybe you didn't even know that they had, that now they can bring to this job. And then the fifth question I ask is, what can we do to keep you? Because that's always the goal. You want to keep your best people. So what can I do to keep you? So stay interview questions are great in terms of that, identifying qualities and skill sets that individuals have.
There's a couple of things. I mean, I really like that concept of the stay interview. So at what point would you do a stay interview? Is this when you think there's a problem, or are you doing it as a course every quarter or something? How would you do it?
That's a wonderful question. So you don't want to do the stay interview questions when you have a problem, because you want to do it prior to that. So for me, I usually try to do the stay interview questions at least twice a year. At least twice, because if you're doing it because sometimes people change, certain things that are going on, but it just keeps you engaged. And the one thing that does also, the individuals that you're doing it with, they feel so heard. They feel that you care because you're just asking them. And let's face it, we all like to be able to communicate and talk about ourselves. And the fact that somebody is asking me these questions and allowing me to talk about myself, I feel great. I feel heard as an employee. And I'm telling you, you get so much valuable information, and the honesty and transparency that's there is great, because you're asking them, about themselves, and they just talk and give you that information. So that's great. I would say about twice a year would be great to do it.
I love that concept. I've never heard it before. It's so simple, but I really like that. And then the other thing you mentioned is just around, I think about, I suppose, identifying good people in your business could be right in another position in the company. I think that's so important. I think often companies who are, know they're in a war for talent, but they overlook, actually, what about if we took this person over here and invested in some training with them, put them over there? And I think that a lot of companies don't look to do that. Would you agree?
I do agree, because we kind of get one-sided. And so when you have a pool of people in your company also, the one thing that I would say that you should do is try to keep them in your company. And so that goes back to even, internal promotions, investing in people, like you said, training people, like, if you already have them there, why would you want them to go someplace else? You don't. So find out, like, where can they fit within your company? And part of the stay interview questions also is you find out, what does a person want? I think that we've been duped into thinking that in order to keep a person engaged, there has to be a promotion, and that promotion has to be a vertical promotion. We always think, well, it has to be the next step up. Employees want to be engaged. So sometimes that engagement comes horizontally. It comes from another still doing something in the realm that they're doing, but they're giving them additional challenges and doing something on the same level, but maybe in a different area. So if you consider that as well, I think that that's a good, recourse in terms of how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep them here? How do we develop the skill sets and talent that we already have?
Absolutely fantastic. Well, we covered a lot there with number 3. So let's go on to number 4.
Okay, 4, create a family environment that employees feel connected to. Okay. Hey, we love family. Everybody wants to feel like you're part of a family. Everybody wants to feel that you're part of something. So create something within your own company. And for all companies, that may look something totally different. I mean, one of the companies that I previously worked for, one of the things that we did is every time somebody had a birthday, and this evolved, we had like a celebration. And as our department grew, the celebrations grew, but the more it grew, then the more exciting it became, because it went from like 1 to 2 people to now we have, 5 people to now we have 15 people. But as it evolved, one of the things that we found out also, like in the party, it was a key thing. We would send out to this person ahead of time. Oh, we know you have this birthday coming up. What type of food do you like? What do you want the celebration to be? So then the person can get excited. And so you also see a flair, or you get a better understanding of that person. Because for every person, it was different, what it was that they liked or they enjoyed, having as part of the party itself. So I'm saying, find out, what is it that you can do or incorporate in your own environment that keeps the family connected. But the thing is, and remember, it's family. It can't be something that just comes from management that now we're going to do, because what you don't want to have happen is now it's this forced thing. I've seen, companies that have, holiday parties, but they're mandatory. Okay, to me, a party is not a party if you're making me go. I should want to go to the party. And so having things that are there, if you're having a holiday party, it should be that people want to go. Like they can't wait to go. But if you have to say to yourself, it's a holiday party and it's mandatory, you're doing something wrong. You've got way bigger problems than you think at that point. So finding out what it is that the staff wants, that everybody wants, because that's your agreement. When you're in a group and everybody wants something, that's the agreement. That's when you get everybody that will buy into it and sign into it. So, definitely find out and create that family environment, and you can do that no matter the size of the organization. Because whether it's town halls, a lot of companies, larger companies, they have these town hall meetings where they bring everybody together. Whether it's a national sales meeting, whether it's a department, find a way to incorporate that within your own company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think that the challenge with it, I'd love to know what you think, is that how do you create that family environment while still understanding that people are going to come and go, and without it being such an emotional blow when someone does leave for the rest of the business? Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm glad we're touching on that, because I've seen organizations do this very badly as well, where you have a person that does make a decision to leave, and it's like almost this personal thing, like, how could they leave me? And they make it hard for the person. And that's not what you want to do. Let's face it, nobody is designed or will be in something forever. Okay, so my job as an employer is to, help you to become the best person you can be. And if I'm doing that, if I'm really doing that, that may mean at some point that you decide to go someplace else. And I have to be okay with that. And if I have other people in place that can now step into positions, if I've done hiring and recruiting well, then I don't have to now hold on to you because you're going to go someplace else. And I think that's part of it. They don't have enough people in place. So now there's this hole that will be there if this person leaves. And so now they want to hold on to them. And and then the person feels guilty, and it's not a good fit, both ways. And I have seen companies do that. Well, okay, if you're going to leave here, you can't ever come back, or, how could you leave? And it's just like having kids. Your kids are home with you. You raise your kids, but you raise them so that they can go out there and they can be the best adults and that they can be in society. It's the same thing. And so when you have employees in your company, you have an opportunity to impact their personal and professional lives and the communities that they're in. And that's the goal. We should be trying to uplift all these things.
Absolutely. Agreed. Fantastic. And number 5?
Okay, so 5 is exemplify a work-life integration from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we say integrate a work-life integration, if we're talking about work-life balance, and if we give people, vacation or holidays or paid time off, it's there for them to be able to take it and refresh to come back to work, bigger and better. But if we have these things and we say, okay, you can do this, but then the example that we see from leadership is they're never taking any time off. They're in the office working, 90 hours a week. That's not an example for the people that we manage or lead. Because even though we say we're giving them this time, take your vacation, they're looking at us. And if they're looking at us, they're going to feel like, well, I can't take this vacation or time off because, my boss is always in here and they're working, like 90 hours. I can't leave, like half a day to, attend my kid's soccer game or whatever it may be. So it's really important that you really lead from the top and exemplify that from the top so that people see what it really looks like, and that they'll do what it is that they see you doing. So it really becomes very important that is modeled from the very top. And whatever it is that you say is there, you as a leader have to do the same thing, because that will definitely trickle down.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it reminds me of one of my consultants, I think it was year before last, or like the beginning of last year. They said in a review, thanks for leaving on time, because it means we can. And I think people will look around and see if the manager's gone home yet, because they're waiting for the manager to go home before they feel comfortable that they can go home. So no one wants to leave when the manager's still there. And it's just so important that it's just not a healthy culture at all like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So 6 is create a company culture that drives employees' purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by create a company culture that drives employees' purpose, it's like if you have everybody coming to work and there's an alignment with the purpose, you're driving that employee to move forward with that purpose. And so there has to be that alignment. And so when we do that, we get the best out of people. And so that's the whole thing. You have employees that are coming in and you want them to be their best. And you want to get the best out of them, because when they're their best, you get the best out of them. Guess what? They give you the best. And so really drive something that's going to create that purpose, that's going to drive them forward with purpose. And that has to be connected with what's important to them and what's important to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So it goes back to that kind of holistic circle of communication between, the employees and the managers. Absolutely. And then number 7.
Number 7, this one is one that I love: pay it forward. When you're doing this, and that's the cyclical way of life, you have to pay things forward. We can't just keep it to ourselves. And we have to teach people to, like, when there's great things out there and you learn great things, we're gonna pay it forward. So that pay it forward can be with, I'm gonna pay it forward with with a colleague or a coworker. I'm gonna pay it forward with other people, a client or a customer. I'm gonna pay it forward. But just having that mindset that I'm going to pay it forward. What I've learned now and what I'm getting, I'm gonna give it to, other people. I've been in organizations before where, in terms of training, maybe the person came in and they didn't get all the training. They had, it was on the ground level up, and they had to learn the hard way, and they had to do things themselves. And I've seen these same people turn around, and when they now have a chance to help somebody else, say, well, I had to learn the hard way. Nobody's trained me, so let them learn no, you want to pay it forward. Help people to be better, and I think that this is just overall life thing, that when we're doing that and we're helping, each other to be better because we're paying it forward, the world winds up becoming better. Our communities become better. And it's a trickling effect all the way around. Fantastic.
Well, look, I think there's so many takeaways from this last 55 minutes, and even before we started talking about the strategies. But I've really enjoyed this, Diana. Thanks so much for sharing all that with us. So the book is Anatomy of Accomplishment. If people want to buy that book, where can they get it?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them, because my chapter is, like I said, a company culture that transforms. And so if they go to bygeorgehr.com/company culture, they can download the chapter of my book. So they download it, they'll get everything, all the 7 strategies that I talked about. This was on the Amazon bestseller list when we debuted the book last March. It was March of 2020, right when the pandemic was starting.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, I'm sure plenty of people will take you up on that. And if anyone wants to reach out to you after this, who are listening on the webinar or the podcast, what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. I am, my most visible platform is, LinkedIn. And so if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I check that, pretty often. I'm on there on a regular basis. And so certainly, download the book, follow me. I really talk about hiring, how to hire people right. I am going to be coming out with a course on hire right the first time, how to attract, how to attract and retain your best talent. So that's going to be coming out in the next month that I'm going to do. And I'm also going to put in the chat, just so that everybody has it, if they want to download the book, so that they can do that.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks so much, Dana. Well, look, I'd love to have you back some point, but look, thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. It's been really, really helpful and insightful.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for having me. I really appreciate this, and I'm delighted to, come on and share with everybody. This is my niche. This is where I really enjoy, and I hope this was of value to everybody on the call.
Absolutely was. Well, look, thanks everyone for attending and listening today. Please join us next week. We're going to be discussing bullying in the workplace, working out how to identify it and how to stamp it out. So please join us then. Diana's just put the link there in the chat for everyone who's still on the webinar. But apart from that, hope everyone has a great week, great weekend. And thanks again, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you so much.